There are moments in life when people look at you and silently decide who you are going to become. Before Serena Williams became a global icon, before the trophies, the headlines, the millions watching her dominate the biggest courts in the world, people had already made their judgment. Too aggressive, too different, too loud, too ambitious, not built for tennis. And maybe the craziest part of her story is this. The doubt did not come from strangers alone. It came from commentators, elite institutions, fans, opponents, and entire crowds who treated her like she did not belong in the sport she would later redefine forever. But Serena never grew up in a world that taught her comfort. She grew up in Compton, surrounded by danger, pressure, fear, and survival. While other children dreamed safely, Serena learned how to fight for space in a world that rarely gave second chances. What makes this story unforgettable is not just the championships, it is what those victories cost her. Because behind every title was pain people never saw. Behind every comeback was a battle happening inside her mind. Behind every moment of greatness was someone trying to tear her down. This is not just the story of a tennis player. This is the story of a little girl who was told she would never belong anywhere near greatness, and became so powerful that the entire sport had no choice but to change around her. And what happened next shocked the entire world. Before Serena Williams ever lifted a Grand Slam trophy, the world had already created limits for her future. People saw a young black girl from Compton and assumed they already knew how her story would end. Tennis was not supposed to look like Serena. The sport belonged to private clubs, polished academies, wealthy families, and traditions that had existed for generations. Serena entered that world carrying none of those advantages. No luxury training centers, no elite background, no social connections waiting to open doors for her. What she had instead was something people underestimated from the beginning, an obsession powerful enough to survive rejection. From the moment she started appearing in junior tournaments, the resistance was immediate. Critics questioned her appearance, her attitude, her power, even the way she celebrated victories. It was as if the tennis world felt uncomfortable watching someone refuse to shrink herself to make others feel comfortable. And that pressure started early. Most young athletes spend their teenage years trying to fit into the system. Serena walked into the system already fighting against it. Every match felt bigger than tennis because she understood something very few people around her understood at the time. If she failed, people would use her failure as proof that girls like her never belonged there in the first place. That kind of pressure destroys most people long before success ever arrives. But Serena developed something dangerous during those years. She learned how to turn disrespect into fuel. Every criticism hardened her focus. Every insult strengthened her confidence. Every door that closed forced her to become mentally stronger than the people trying to stop her. The terrifying part for her opponents was this. While they were playing tennis, Serena was fighting for survival, identity, respect, and legacy all at once. And that changes a person completely. Because once someone learns how to survive doubt at that level, they stop fearing almost everything else. But nobody was prepared for the environment that created that mentality in the first place. Compton was not the kind of place people associated with greatness. When most people heard the name of that neighborhood, they thought about violence, gangs, police sirens, poverty, and fear. They did not think about world champions. They did not think about history being written. And they definitely did not imagine two little girls training on cracked public tennis courts, while danger existed only a few streets away. But that was Serena's reality. While other future tennis stars trained in expensive country clubs surrounded by comfort, Serena and Venus practiced in an environment where distractions could destroy a dream overnight. Gunshots were not unusual. Tension was part of daily life. Safety was never guaranteed. And somehow that environment became one of Serena's greatest advantages, because growing up there forced her to develop mental toughness long before fame ever arrived. Pressure did not scare her the way it scared other athletes. Crowds did not intimidate her. Criticism did not break her. She had already learned as a child how to stay focused while chaos existed around her. But the most important figure during those years was her father, Richard Williams. People called him crazy, delusional, unrealistic. He walked around telling people his daughters would become tennis champions long before they had any proof. Most laughed at him. Some openly mocked him. A man from Compton claiming he would raise the greatest players in the world sounded impossible. But Richard believed something that changed Serena forever. He believed environment did not have the power to define destiny unless you allowed it to. That belief shaped the way Serena saw herself. While the world saw limitations, her father constantly forced her to see possibility. Every practice session carried a deeper lesson. Nobody was coming to rescue them. Nobody was going to hand them respect. If they wanted a place in history, they would have to take it themselves. And Serena absorbed every part of that mentality. She learned discipline before fame. She learned sacrifice before success. She learned resilience before recognition. Most people only see the championships. They do not see the years of invisible work that created the champion. What happened in Compton built something inside Serena that money could never buy. A level of emotional endurance that later allowed her to survive moments that would destroy most athletes completely. Because the higher Serena climbed, the more brutal the attacks against her became. And soon, the entire world would begin watching her under a microscope. Before the world knew Serena Williams as a legend, she was simply the younger sister trying to keep up with Venus. And that changed everything. The bond between Serena and Venus was never normal competition. It was something far deeper. They were raised inside the same struggle, protected by the same family, shaped by the same impossible vision. While the world doubted them individually, the two sisters created a private universe where greatness already felt real long before anyone else believed it. Every practice became a battle, not because they hated losing to each other, but because each sister forced the other to evolve faster. There was no easy environment inside that household, no excuses, no softness. If one improved, the other had to improve too. That kind of pressure can destroy relationships. Instead, it created one of the most powerful partnerships sports has ever seen. But there was something emotionally complicated hidden beneath their success. As Venus began rising first, much of the attention focused on her. The media saw Venus as the future superstar. Serena was often viewed as the younger sister, standing in the shadow of someone larger, faster and already becoming famous. Most people in that situation become insecure. Some spend their entire lives trapped in comparison. Serena did the opposite. Watching Venus succeed awakened something fierce inside her. Instead of feeling smaller, she became more hungry. Every achievement by her sister silently proved that the impossible dream their family carried might actually be real. And when Serena finally started exploding onto the professional scene, the tennis world faced something it had never seen before. Two sisters dominating a sport that had never truly welcomed girls like them. That made people uncomfortable. Suddenly, Serena and Venus were not just athletes anymore. They became symbols. Every match they played carried tension far beyond tennis. Crowds questioned them, critics accused them, rumors surrounded their family constantly. Some fans even struggled to accept their dominance because it shattered the traditional image of what tennis was supposed to be. And through all of it, the sisters stayed together. That unity became Serena's emotional armor. In a world constantly trying to isolate her, Venus remained one of the few people who truly understood the pressure she carried. But the deeper Serena entered the elite level of tennis, the more obvious it became that many people still saw her as an outsider. And soon, she would feel that rejection more brutally than ever before. Serena Williams did not need to win championships to make people uncomfortable. Her presence alone was already enough. Before she fully dominated the sport, there were already whispers surrounding her. The way she looked, the way she spoke, the way she carried herself. People analyzed everything about her as if she needed permission to exist inside a world that had never been designed for someone like her. And Serena felt that tension immediately. Tennis had always protected a certain image: quiet elegance, controlled emotion, traditional behavior. Serena entered that culture with power, intensity, confidence, and authenticity that could not be softened or hidden. She did not shrink herself to fit expectations. That became a problem for many people. What made the situation even more painful was how subtle some of the rejection appeared. It was hidden behind criticism, disguised as professionalism. Commentators questioned her attitude more harshly than others. Fans reacted differently to her celebrations. Media narratives constantly framed her confidence as arrogance, and Serena noticed all of it. Imagine entering every arena already feeling judged before the match even begins. Imagine carrying the pressure of proving not only that you belong, but that your existence itself deserves respect. That level of emotional exhaustion destroys confidence over time. But Serena responded in a way nobody expected. Instead of becoming quieter, she became more fearless. The more the world tried to define her, the more unapologetic she became. She played with intensity. She celebrated loudly. She showed emotion openly. She refused to erase parts of herself just to make audiences comfortable. That decision came with consequences, because once Serena stopped trying to earn acceptance, many people stopped hiding their hostility toward her. Crowds became colder. Criticism became more aggressive. Every mistake received more attention. Every emotional reaction became headline material. And deep down, Serena understood something terrifying. No matter how successful she became, some people would never fully accept her. That realization could have broken her mentally. Instead, it pushed her into another level of greatness, because Serena stopped chasing approval and started chasing domination. And once that switch happened, the sport was about to witness a version of Serena Williams far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Serena Williams understood something very early in her career that most people never fully realize. The world often celebrates confidence only when it comes from certain people. When Serena spoke with certainty about her abilities, critics called her arrogant. When she showed emotion after victories, people said she lacked class. When she carried herself with power and presence, many acted as if confidence itself had become offensive. But Serena was not born believing she was better than everyone else. She was raised believing she had to believe in herself because almost nobody else would. That changes the meaning of confidence completely. Every champion develops self-belief. Without it, greatness is impossible. The difference was that Serena expressed her confidence openly, and the world was not prepared for someone like her, refusing to appear small, quiet, or grateful simply for being allowed into the room. And the backlash became relentless. The media constantly searched for ways to humble her. Opponents felt personally offended by her intensity. Interviews often focused more on her personality than her achievements. It was as if people wanted Serena to apologize for knowing exactly how powerful she truly was. But confidence was not a performance for her. It was survival. Because behind that public image existed enormous pressure and private fear. Serena knew every weakness in her game. She knew the criticism. She knew people were waiting for her to fail. That confidence became armor protecting her from a world constantly trying to crack her mentally. And over time, something fascinating happened. The more people criticized her confidence, the stronger it became. Serena stopped trying to convince people to understand her. She stopped wasting energy explaining herself. She realized that no version of herself would ever fully satisfy everyone watching. So she focused on winning instead. That mentality transformed her into something terrifying on the court. Serena did not play cautiously. She played like someone carrying years of doubt, anger, rejection, and pressure inside every swing. Her opponents were not just facing talent anymore. They were facing someone emotionally conditioned to fight through discomfort, hostility, and criticism without breaking. And soon, Serena's emotional battles would become far more painful than anything happening on the tennis court itself. People saw Serena Williams lifting trophies and assumed confidence came naturally to her. What they did not see was how deeply defeat affected her. For Serena, losing was never just losing. Every defeat reopened old wounds. Every mistake triggered memories of criticism, doubt, and public judgment, waiting to explode the moment she showed weakness. While most athletes feared losing matches, Serena often carried the heavier burden of fearing what the world would say after the loss. And the higher she climbed, the harsher those reactions became. When Serena lost, headlines questioned her mentality. Critics analyzed her emotions. Fans treated rare failures like proof that she was finally vulnerable. The same dominance that made her legendary also created impossible expectations around her. People stopped expecting Serena to compete. They expected her to be perfect. That pressure becomes psychologically exhausting over time, because no matter how powerful an athlete appears publicly, private insecurity still exists. Serena felt frustration, self-doubt, anger, fear. There were moments where losses haunted her long after the cameras disappeared, nights where the emotional weight followed her home in silence, and she rarely allowed the public to fully see it. Instead, Serena developed an ability that separated her from almost everyone else in sports. She learned how to suffer privately while performing publicly. That emotional discipline became one of the foundations of her greatness. Even during moments of pain, she kept showing up. Even after devastating defeats, she returned to compete again and again. While people outside questioned her mentality, Serena was surviving emotional battles most could never fully understand. Because for someone carrying her level of pressure, every loss feels personal, not just to herself but to everyone watching. And yet those painful moments slowly created something inside Serena that became impossible to stop. Every defeat sharpened her focus. Every public criticism strengthened her resilience. Every setback forced her to evolve mentally in ways victories never could. But there was another burden growing heavier behind the scenes. The pressure surrounding Serena was no longer only about tennis. She had become something much bigger than an athlete. At some point, Serena Williams stopped being seen as only a tennis player. She became a symbol, and symbols carry weight that ordinary people rarely understand. Every time Serena stepped onto a court, millions of people saw more than an athlete competing for a trophy. Young black girls saw possibility. Women saw strength. Outsiders saw resistance. Entire communities saw someone fighting battles they recognized in their own lives. That kind of responsibility changes a person, because suddenly, failure no longer feels private. Serena knew people were watching her for hope, watching her for representation, watching her prove that someone from her background could dominate a world that never expected her to enter it. And while that inspired millions, it also created crushing pressure. Imagine waking up every day knowing that one emotional reaction, one bad performance, one public mistake could become global headlines within hours. Imagine constantly carrying the expectation of being strong even during moments when you feel exhausted, hurt, or mentally overwhelmed. That became Serena's reality. The world celebrated her strength while rarely allowing her vulnerability, and the pressure only intensified as her success grew. Every championship increased expectations. Every victory raised the standard higher. The public stopped viewing Serena as human and started viewing her as something almost indestructible. But no human being can carry that forever without damage. There were moments where the emotional exhaustion became visible, moments where frustration exploded publicly because the pressure inside her had been building for years. Critics often judged those moments without understanding what Serena had been carrying long before the cameras captured her reactions. Because pressure changes people slowly. It builds silently, match after match, year after year. Until eventually, even the strongest individuals begin fighting battles inside themselves that nobody else can see. And Serena kept fighting anyway. That is what made her extraordinary. Not perfection, not trophies, not records. It was the fact that she kept walking back into arenas where the pressure could mentally destroy almost anyone else alive. But soon, Serena would experience a moment that revealed just how hostile the world around her had truly become. And it would happen in front of millions watching. There is a different kind of pain that comes from feeling unwanted in a place where you have already proven you belong. Serena Williams experienced that pain in front of the entire world. As her dominance grew, so did the hostility surrounding her. Crowds that celebrated other champions often treated Serena differently. Small moments became major controversies when she was involved. Emotional reactions that were forgiven in others became personal attacks when they came from her. And over time, Serena began walking into certain stadiums, already feeling the tension before a single point had even started. Then came the moments that changed everything. Matches where boos drowned out her voice, crowds openly cheering against her, audiences reacting to her frustration with anger instead of empathy. Situations where Serena no longer felt like a champion being respected, but like a target being watched. One of the most painful parts was how public it all became. Millions of people witnessed these moments live, but very few understood what constant hostility does to a person psychologically. Serena was not just competing against opponents anymore. She was carrying the emotional weight of feeling isolated inside arenas that should have celebrated greatness, and yet she kept winning. That is what frustrated people even more. The louder the criticism became, the stronger Serena often played. The colder the crowds acted, the more mentally dangerous she became on the court. It was as if every negative reaction activated another layer of resilience inside her. But resilience has limits. There were moments when Serena's frustration exploded publicly, because no human being can absorb endless pressure forever without emotional consequences. Critics quickly labeled those reactions as proof of anger or instability, while ignoring the years of tension that had built underneath them. What many people failed to understand was this: Serena was never only reacting to one moment. She was reacting to years of accumulated disrespect, judgment, pressure, double standards, and emotional exhaustion, all crashing together at once. And still, she continued showing up. That level of endurance is rare. Most people break quietly long before reaching that point. Serena somehow kept performing while carrying emotional wounds that the public rarely acknowledged. But behind the championships and public battles, another war was happening silently inside her body. And this next challenge nearly took everything away from her forever. From the outside, Serena Williams looked unstoppable. The trophies kept coming. The records kept growing. The world saw power, dominance, confidence, and history being made in real time. But hidden behind those victories was a level of pain most people never imagined. Because greatness at Serena's level demanded destruction from the body and mind at the same time. Every season pushed her through brutal physical exhaustion. Injuries became constant companions: damaged knees, muscle tears, endless recovery sessions, painkillers, fatigue, pressure to return before her body was fully healed. Serena often played through suffering that would force most athletes to walk away completely. And the terrifying part was how normal it became for her. The public only saw the final result. They saw Serena lifting trophies while hiding the reality that many victories came while her body was already breaking down underneath the surface. But physical pain was only part of the battle. The emotional isolation became even heavier over time. Success created distance between Serena and ordinary life. The bigger she became, the harder it became to trust people, relax mentally, or escape expectations. Everywhere she went, she carried pressure: cameras, headlines, criticism, constant analysis. Her existence slowly transformed into permanent public observation. That kind of visibility becomes exhausting, and yet Serena kept competing at the highest level year after year. Even while carrying invisible emotional weight nobody truly understood. Then came one of the darkest periods of her entire life: health complications that suddenly made tennis feel insignificant. Moments where survival itself became uncertain. Moments where Serena was forced to confront something far more frightening than losing championships: the possibility of losing everything. For the first time in years, the strongest athlete in the world found herself vulnerable in a way no amount of mental toughness could fully control. And what happened next would push Serena into the most difficult comeback of her entire life. Serena Williams had already survived pressure, criticism, injuries, and global scrutiny. But nothing prepared her for what happened after becoming a mother. When Serena announced her pregnancy, the world celebrated the news. People imagined a beautiful new chapter in the life of a champion who had already conquered nearly everything possible in sports. What nobody saw was how close she came to dying. After giving birth, Serena faced severe medical complications that turned one of the happiest moments of her life into a terrifying fight for survival. Blood clots, emergency procedures, physical trauma, fear. Her body, which had carried her through decades of dominance, suddenly became fragile in ways she had never experienced before. And emotionally, everything changed. For the first time in years, Serena was not thinking about trophies or rankings. She was thinking about survival, about family, about whether her life would ever feel normal again. The recovery was brutal. Simple movements became difficult. Training felt almost impossible. The same athlete who once intimidated the entire tennis world now struggled to rebuild strength step by step. Her body no longer responded the same way. Fatigue hit differently. Pain lasted longer. Doubt became louder. And outside the court, another battle had already begun. People questioned whether she should even return to professional tennis. Critics wondered if motherhood had permanently changed her career. Some believed Serena's era was over, but they underestimated her again. What made this comeback different from every other challenge in her life was that Serena herself was no longer the same person. Motherhood changed her priorities, her emotions, and even the way she understood strength. Before, Serena fought mainly to prove herself. Now she fought for something deeper, for legacy, for identity, for the example she would leave behind for her daughter, and that transformed her mentality completely. Every painful training session carried greater meaning. Every comeback match became proof that women do not stop being powerful after becoming mothers. Serena was no longer only fighting for victories, she was fighting against an idea the world had repeated for generations, that motherhood weakens greatness. And once she returned to the court, the entire sports world realized something shocking. Serena Williams was still dangerous. Most athletes spend their careers chasing greatness. Serena Williams returned after motherhood trying to reclaim herself, and that made her comeback far more powerful than anyone expected. When she walked back onto the court, people immediately noticed the difference. Serena was still fierce, still focused, still intimidating. But beneath that intensity existed a new layer of emotional depth shaped by everything she had survived. The problem was that the tennis world had already started moving on without her. New stars were rising. Younger players were faster, fresher, and physically untouched by years of punishment. Critics quietly questioned whether Serena's body could still survive the demands of elite competition. Others wondered if fear no longer existed when opponents looked across the net at her. For the first time in years, Serena entered tournaments carrying uncertainty instead of dominance. And yet, something extraordinary happened. Even after everything her body had endured, Serena still found ways to push herself into major finals. Match after match, she reminded the world that greatness is not only about physical ability, it is about mentality, presence, experience, emotional endurance. Opponents still feared her, not because she was unbeatable anymore, but because Serena had survived things bigger than tennis itself. That kind of experience creates a different level of composure under pressure. While younger athletes panicked during critical moments, Serena had already lived through pain most of them could not imagine. But this comeback was emotionally complicated. Every victory felt inspiring. Every loss felt heartbreaking. People desperately wanted one more perfect ending for her career, one more historic championship, one final moment where the Queen reclaimed the throne completely. The pressure surrounding every tournament became overwhelming because the entire world understood time was running out. And Serena understood it too. That is what made these final years so emotional to watch. For the first time, fans were not just witnessing dominance, they were witnessing humanity, vulnerability, aging, sacrifice, persistence. Serena was no longer simply destroying opponents. She was showing the world what courage looks like when your body, your mind, and time itself begin fighting against you. And somehow, that made her even more legendary than before, because championships inspire people, but resilience changes them forever. And while Serena continued rewriting history on the court, her influence outside tennis had already become impossible to measure. Serena Williams did not just dominate tennis, she transformed it. Before Serena, the sport operated inside a very specific image. Certain traditions, certain expectations, certain standards about who belonged at the center of attention and how champions were supposed to behave. Then Serena arrived and shattered all of it. She changed the way tennis looked. She changed the way tennis sounded. She changed the way tennis felt. Her power completely altered the game itself. Opponents were no longer facing traditional tennis strategies. They were facing explosive serves, Overwhelming force, relentless intensity, and mental pressure unlike anything the sport had experienced before. Serena turned physical dominance into an art form, and once she proved that style could win consistently, the entire sport had to evolve around her. But her impact went far beyond technique. Serena brought authenticity into spaces that had always demanded conformity. She wore what she wanted, spoke how she wanted, expressed emotion openly. She refused to erase parts of herself simply to fit old expectations built by other people. That terrified critics for years, because Serena represented change that could not be controlled anymore. Young athletes around the world started seeing themselves differently because of her. Girls who never imagined belonging in tennis suddenly believed they had permission to dream bigger. Entire generations grew up watching someone who looked powerful, confident, emotional, ambitious, and unapologetically real at the same time. That kind of influence changes culture permanently. And perhaps the most remarkable part is this. Serena forced respect from people who never wanted to give it. No amount of criticism could erase the numbers, the titles, the records, the longevity. Eventually, even her harshest critics ran out of arguments because Serena's greatness became too overwhelming to deny. She did not ask the sport for acceptance. She became so dominant that acceptance became unavoidable. And over time, something fascinating happened. The same world that once questioned whether Serena belonged in tennis slowly realized tennis itself would never be the same without her. But behind all the trophies, all the history, and all the cultural impact, there was one final secret that made Serena different from almost everyone else alive: her mentality. And that mentality is what truly made her unstoppable. What separated Serena Williams from other athletes was not only talent, it was the way she thought. Because talent can win matches, but mentality is what survives pressure, pain, criticism, fear, and time itself. Serena developed a mindset that became almost impossible to break. While most people collapsed under public pressure, she learned how to perform inside chaos. While others feared criticism, Serena became emotionally conditioned to expect it. Every hostile crowd, every disrespectful headline, every painful defeat slowly strengthened her psychological endurance. And eventually, pressure stopped intimidating her the way it intimidates normal people. That is what made her dangerous. Serena understood something most champions never fully master. Emotions can either control you or fuel you. Instead of running from anger, frustration, or doubt, she learned how to convert those emotions into focus. The bigger the moment became, the calmer and more locked in she often looked. It was almost frightening to watch. Opponents knew that even if Serena was losing, the match never truly felt safe, because mentally, she carried a level of belief that refused to disappear under pressure. She trusted herself in critical moments with absolute conviction. That mentality was built over decades, built through rejection, built through survival, built through pain, built through constant battles both inside and outside the sport. And once that level of resilience exists inside someone, ordinary fear loses power completely. But Serena's mentality was not about pretending weakness did not exist. She experienced insecurity like everyone else. She felt doubt, anxiety, emotional exhaustion. The difference was that she refused to surrender to those feelings permanently. She kept moving forward anyway. That is the real definition of mental strength. Not perfection, not constant confidence, not pretending everything feels easy. True mental strength is continuing to fight while carrying fear inside you. And Serena mastered that better than almost anyone the sports world has ever seen, which is why her legacy became something far bigger than records or championships. She became proof of what a human being can achieve after surviving years of doubt without giving up. There are athletes who win championships. Then there are athletes who change people forever. Serena Williams became something much bigger than sports because her story reached far beyond tennis courts, rankings, and trophies. Millions of people who never watched a single tennis match still saw themselves inside her journey. That is rare, because Serena's legacy was never built only on winning. It was built on what her victories represented to people who spent their lives feeling underestimated, excluded, or invisible. She became proof that greatness does not need permission. Every time Serena walked onto a court, she carried years of struggle with her. People saw resilience, They saw someone refusing to shrink under pressure, someone surviving criticism without losing identity, someone continuing to rise despite the world constantly searching for flaws. And over time, Serena's impact spread into areas far beyond athletics. Fashion changed because of her confidence. Conversations about race and representation changed because of her visibility. Expectations surrounding women in sports changed because she refused to accept limitations quietly. Even the definition of strength changed. Before Serena, strength in women was often expected to appear controlled, soft, or carefully acceptable. Serena shattered that image completely. She showed the world that power, ambition, emotion, competitiveness, vulnerability, and femininity could all exist together inside the same person. That terrified some people, but it inspired millions more. And perhaps the most powerful part of her legacy is this: she opened doors she knew she might never fully benefit from herself. Future generations of athletes will enter spaces with more confidence because Serena endured years of hostility before them. Young girls will dream bigger because Serena proved impossible dreams can survive impossible environments. That is how real legacies are built, not only through personal success, but through the lives transformed afterward. And by the end of her journey, the little girl once treated like an outsider had become something nobody could erase from history, a symbol of greatness the world would remember forever. In the beginning, they saw a little girl from Compton who supposedly did not belong. They doubted her appearance, they doubted her attitude, they doubted her future. They doubted whether someone like Serena Williams could ever become the face of a sport built without people like her in mind. And somehow every ounce of that doubt became fuel. That is what makes Serena's story unforgettable. She did not rise from comfort. She did not rise from acceptance. She did not rise because the world believed in her. She rose while fighting resistance at every level imaginable. And maybe that is why her legacy feels larger than sports itself. Because deep down, Serena represents something universal, the part of every person that has been underestimated, rejected, judged, ignored, the part that keeps asking one painful question: what happens if I refuse to quit? Serena answered that question with her entire life. She became one of the greatest athletes in human history, not because the road was easy, but because she survived roads that were never supposed to lead someone like her toward greatness in the first place. And in the end, the world had no choice but to watch the impossible become reality. The little girl training on public courts surrounded by chaos became a global icon, a champion, a cultural force, a symbol of resilience recognized across generations. But perhaps the most inspiring part of her story is this: Serena Williams never truly defeated doubt. She learned how to move forward while carrying it. That is the lesson people will remember long after the trophies fade from memory. Courage is not the absence of fear. Greatness is not the absence of pain. And legends are not people who never struggle. Legends are the ones who continue anyway. And Serena Williams continued until her name became immortal.